The rain had just begun to fall when Daniel closed up his small food stall for the night. He wasn't a famous chef, not anymore. Once, years ago, he had worked in the kitchen of a five-star restaurant, creating dishes that critics praised and patrons paid thousands to experience. But life had changed when his wife passed away, leaving him as the sole parent to his little daughter, Emma. The glamorous kitchens and Michelin stars no longer mattered. What mattered was raising Emma, giving her love, and keeping food on the table. So Daniel ran his modest street-side stall, cooking with heart, serving warm meals to tired workers and lonely wanderers. That night, just as he was locking the last container, he heard the faint sound of crying. It wasn't just any cry, it was the desperate, broken wail of a baby. He turned, looking across the street, and there under the awning of a closed boutique was a young woman struggling with her infant. She looked out of place, her clothes were fine, her coat expensive, but she was shaking, clearly lost and overwhelmed. The baby in her arms, red-faced and crying uncontrollably, made Daniel's chest tighten. He knew the sound of hunger when he heard it. He approached slowly, not wanting to scare her. "Excuse me," he said gently, "is everything all right?" The woman glanced at him, her eyes brimming with tears. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect composure shattered. "She won't stop crying," the woman whispered. "I've tried everything. She won't eat. I don't know what to do anymore." Daniel's gaze softened as he looked at the baby. "May I try something?" he asked. There was a pause, the woman hesitating. She didn't know him, but something about his steady voice, his fatherly warmth, made her nod. Daniel unlocked his stall again and started pulling out ingredients. He worked quietly, his hands moving with a calmness only born of experience. He knew babies' stomachs could be sensitive, and he knew just the thing, something his late wife had once taught him. He slowly simmered rice until it was soft, blending it into a silky porridge. He added a hint of fresh carrot for natural sweetness, nothing processed, nothing artificial. He worked with patience, humming softly, as though the very sound of his presence could soothe the child. The baby's cries began to soften as the smell of the porridge filled the air. Daniel carefully tested the temperature, then offered the small spoonful to the mother, gesturing for her to try. The baby, still hiccuping from her cries, took the first taste, then another, and then, miraculously, she calmed. Her little fists unclenched, and she ate eagerly, her eyes fluttering with relief. The woman gasped, tears springing to her eyes as she watched her daughter finally find comfort. "How did you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "Sometimes, it's not about the recipe. It's about love. Food made with love, it heals, even when nothing else seems to." The woman's lips trembled, and for a moment she forgot the image she had always upheld to the world, that of untouchable wealth and power. She was Margaret Lane, a billionaire, the owner of one of the largest real estate empires in the country. She had everything money could buy, but in that moment, none of it mattered. Her daughter's cries had been silenced not by doctors or expensive formulas, but by a humble chef who had lost everything except his heart. "Thank you," she whispered, holding her baby close. "I don't even know your name." "Daniel," he said simply, wiping his hands on his apron. "And she's Emma," he added, nodding to his daughter who had been quietly sitting in the corner of the stall, watching everything with curious eyes. Emma smiled shyly at the baby. "She's cute," she said, her little voice warm and genuine. Margaret looked at the girl, then back at Daniel, and something inside her shifted. She had spent her life surrounded by polished boardrooms, people who bowed to her because of her wealth, not because of who she truly was. But here was a man who hadn't asked her for anything. He had simply helped, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Over the next few days, Margaret found herself returning to Daniel's stall. At first, she told herself it was just to thank him properly, maybe to learn the recipe for her baby. But each time she came, she found herself lingering. Daniel would cook, his movements unpretentious but graceful, and Emma would chatter about school or ask Margaret questions about her baby. Margaret found herself smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in years. One evening, she confessed quietly, "I never learned how to do this. My life was busy. Meetings, decisions, money. I thought I was doing everything right. But when she was born, I realized how unprepared I was. I don't know how to be a mother." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and said softly, "Being a parent isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when you're scared. Love teaches the rest." His words struck her harder than she expected. She had built skyscrapers, signed billion-dollar deals, but she felt like a child when it came to the one thing that mattered most, her daughter. Watching Daniel, seeing the quiet strength in how he raised Emma despite his struggles, made her heart ache. One night, after Margaret had visited again, Daniel sat alone with Emma. She tilted her head and asked, "Daddy, why does the lady always look sad, even when she smiles?" Daniel thought about it. "Maybe because she's lonely," he said softly. Emma hugged him. "Like you were before me and Mommy." He kissed her forehead. "Exactly. But some people forget that even the strongest need someone to remind them they're not alone." As weeks passed, Margaret started helping Daniel at the stall. She didn't need to, but she wanted to. She learned to chop vegetables, to wash dishes, to stir the pot just right. People passing by often stared, unable to believe that the glamorous billionaire was working at a street stall. But Margaret didn't care. For the first time, she felt real, alive. She wasn't Margaret Lane the billionaire, she was simply Margaret, a mother learning how to care. One evening, as the sun set and the three of them shared a simple meal together, Emma giggling, Margaret's baby cooing, Daniel smiling quietly, Margaret's eyes filled with tears again. She looked at Daniel and whispered, "Do you know what you've done? You didn't just feed my daughter. You reminded me what it means to be human. You gave me back something I didn't even realize I had lost." Daniel shook his head gently. "I didn't give you anything. You already had it, you just needed someone to remind you." In that small stall, on a street corner that most people would pass without a second glance, a billionaire mother found hope again, a single dad found unexpected companionship, and two little girls found laughter and warmth. It wasn't a grand love story or a fairy tale. It was something far more powerful, an ordinary act of kindness that became extraordinary because it was born from the simplest of truths. Love, when shared, changes everything. And though Margaret's tears had once come from helplessness, that night they came from gratitude, from the realization that no fortune in the world could compare to the quiet magic of a single dad chef, his little girl, and a recipe made with love.